the world with water again. And God also makes a covenant with all the creatures, all the living creatures. And in Genesis 9, tells them to come out of the ark and to fill the world, to be fruitful. In other words, and this is a very important point, God doesn't command 99.9% of the creatures to come out of the ark and go extinct, because that's what we find in the earth's crust. About 99.9% of all living creatures that have ever lived are now extinct. No, God doesn't talk about extinction. He says to all the creatures, and that would include T-Rex and all the dinosaurs, to come out of the ark and fill the earth. So what should we find in terms of a fossil pattern, a bone pattern? After the flood, we should see a very similar pattern, right up until today, in which we find each and every bone, every representation of every creature, including the dinosaurs, which should not have gone extinct, to be found in the earth's crust. And to make our pattern fully complete, think about Genesis 4 and Tubal-Cain in verse 22, where Tubal-Cain made instruments of bronze and iron in Genesis 4. So this is before the flood. Remember, the flood is Genesis 6 to 9. So what should we also find in the earth's crust? We should find metal instruments right at the very bottom, down near the creation basal layer. Remember, metal doesn't float. These wouldn't have been all shook up by the flood and floated to the top of the fossil record. They would have stayed at the bottom. And so too with all the bones of the first creatures. Remember, bones don't float. So this is the pattern that we would expect in the Earth's crust if indeed young Earth creation is true. But what do we actually find in the Earth's crust? Well, here are the scientific facts. This is the geological column, and it shows the appearance of different creatures at different times in geological history. Now, the thing I want to point out, we don't need to talk about the age of the universe. All I'm dealing with is the simple pattern of appearance of different organisms. And as you compare this, figure 4 in your handout, with that of young Earth creation in figure 1, you can see that the prediction of young Earth creation doesn't even come close. Another thing I'd like to point out is when it comes to this pattern, it's been established for at least 150 years. This was established by 1850, and it's significant, this date, because Darwin's Origin of Species comes out in 1859. What's my point? The geological column was not established by a bunch of evolutionists. In fact, most scientists at this time were anti-evolutionists, and I might add a good number of them were Christians. And all they were doing was going to the Earth's crust, mapping it out, and this is what they came up with. So this is about as, sorry for the pun, as rock solid can be. And again, it doesn't match with the young Earth creationist prediction. Let's now get on to the second Christian view of origins, known as progressive creation. This is creation over 6 geological ages or days. It's also known as old Earth creation. Progressive creationists believe that the days of Genesis, in Genesis 1, the first creation account, that the days are long, long periods of time, millions and millions of years old, and that God created progressively, that is, intermittently at different times, introducing different creatures during Earth history. Now, if progressive creation is true, we can make a scientific prediction with regards to the fossil pattern that we should find in the Earth's crust. So let's look at the expected pattern in which living organisms appear in the fossil record. According to Genesis 1, the first creatures to be created by God appear on day 3, and these are land plants. So we should expect them to appear first near the bottom of the fossil record, and for them to continue right up until today. Now, interestingly, on the 4th day of creation, the sun is created. And I think you see the problem already. How did land plants, which were created on day 3, live for millions and millions of years without the sun to keep them warm and at the same time to give them direct sunlight for them to grow and develop? Yeah, there's a serious problem here. The next group of living organisms to be created by God appear on day 5, and these are birds, fish, and whales. In other words, flying creatures and creatures of the sea. And finally, on day 6, we have amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and humans. And of course, humans are mammals. They appear last. So what we have here is the prediction of the appearance of living organisms in the Earth's crust as depicted in the fossil record, if indeed progressive creation is true. Well, I think you know there's a problem here, and if you go to your handout and look at the actual fossil record that is right there before our eyes in the Earth's crust, that the pattern that we actually see in the Earth's crust does not even come close to that predicted by progressive creation as depicted by Figure 2 in your handout. So, like young Earth creation, I can't accept progressive creation simply because the scientific facts do not match with the predictions of the scientific model. And lastly, here's our third Christian view of origins, known as evolutionary creation. This position believes that God, the Lord, created the universe and life through an evolutionary process. Evolution, according to this position,